Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristen, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. And today we are doing something for the first time, so stay tuned. And before we begin, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ron Ward. Ron, tell us about our special guest.
Yes, Kristen, we are extremely excited. We are joined by January Donovan, a two-time best-selling author, Forbes' top self-worth strategist. I want to hear more about that. A wife, a mother of 8, and founder and CEO of the Woman School.
That's right, Ron. She's on a mission to give women what the culture has stolen from them: practical skills, unshakable peace, and the ability to live whole.
January Donovan, welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you, Ron. It's a pleasure. I'm excited to share this mission to the world. I think that the world is finally ready for it.
I agree. And we had a chance to connect the other day, and I immediately was like, oh my gosh, you have to come on our podcast. You would do so much. Not only it's great to promote what you have going on, but our audience, selfishly, our audience is going to gain so much from hearing from you today. So let's start with this. What is the Woman School and why did you create it?
Great. Well, great starting point. So just give you a 10,000 foot overview. 21 years ago, I just had this crazy dream. I said, we need a school for women that teaches women skills that I wish I had, skills to manage my mind, manage my emotion. And so I had just dreamt of a school that teaches women how to be a woman. And honestly, I just thought that was sort of a crazy idea. Now, fast forward, the Woman School has become relevant in a world that can no longer define what a woman is. And so essentially what the Woman School is a comprehensive training on how to flourish as a woman without compromising your values, without dishonoring men, without this idea that you can be whatever you want, whenever you feel like it. It's a response to the cultural crisis that women today are being devalued, that also has devalued men. So we want to train women how to be a woman in a world that can no longer define it.
Amen.
I love that, January. I'm going to be the only male voice on here. So I do want to encourage, if you are a male and you're listening and you go, oh, this is a special for women. No. Stay with us. We need this. And we want to hear more about it. So January, you talk about women being underskilled, not underpowered. And that really caught my interest. Can you explain that?
Yeah, and I think we've got this huge women's empowerment movement that I think came from the feminist movement. Now, when the feminist movement happened, it was really started with the fact that we needed to have, equality for women. It just was not equal. They needed to change. But what happened is that it was right about the second wave, it became infiltrated with a Marxist movement that then became infiltrated with this idea that I no longer just want equality. I want I want to be like a man. I only want to be like a man. We don't need men. And so we are seeing the byproduct of this women's movement that really has emasculated men, that has also talked about sort of women's empowerment. I can be everything I want to be. I am woman, hear me roar, at the cost of who she is. And what this sort of women's empowerment, I can do whatever I want, is really telling women, you don't need men. You can sacrifice parts of your life, forget motherhood, and that in order to be everything that you want to be, you have to abandon the very thing that actually makes you human and makes you a woman. But the thing that is such an important part is that when you're, saying it's women, female is future, you're essentially eradicating half the population and emasculating men as a narrative. And it's not a sustainable model for society.
Right. And I love that you bring that up. It made me think of something, Lindsey Graham, the Patriot Barbie.
Yes.
She mentioned to me that, so when she flew out for an event we had here, she noticed, she's like, I could have lifted my bag and put it in the overhead on the airplane, right? But, and Ron, this speaks to something that you're known to do when you travel. But a man looked over at her and he was like, do you need help with that? And she goes, yes, I could have done it myself, but I let him be a man. And I was like, sure, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to do that more often. And not play dumb, but just understand that we are wired differently.
Yeah.
And I'm going through, I mean, myself, I also like to, I can do this myself. Like it comes from like, oh, I want to look badass, right? Like I want to look like I'm tough. I can handle it. But you're putting on this armor as a woman, you're putting on this armor and it transpires into other areas of your life. So I think what you're doing is so amazing because it helps us really understand the many layers to it. And Ron, I know that you often offer to help
Well,
bags.
everything that January is saying rings true. And from the man's perspective, I have men contact me, especially in the dating realm. They're like, I'm nervous. I don't know what to say. I don't know what's appropriate. Do you open a door? There's so many things. It's created such confusion to men. And I think sometimes that's overlooked as well.
Well, it's really massively overlooked to a point that more men are now suicidal. Men no longer want to ask women out. There's just a massive confusion because what we've done at the cost of our freedom, the cost of saying women's freedom is that we have devalued men. And I think that this is happening in marriages. This is happening in leadership. This is happening in corporate. And so what we are sort of seeing is that 150 years ago, there was limited freedom to right now, unlimited freedom. I think we're ready for a new conversation of what is freedom in context of our nature as both men and women. And I think we're ready for that conversation. Like, I just want to speak to that, your bag. Like, I don't even think women know what that looks or should feel like. And I don't think right now we even understand what it's like to receive help from men or to offer help from women because there's been so many confusion. And here's where I think it is so often is that we have defined a strong woman as I am woman. I can do it all by myself. I don't need you.
Hear me roar.
Yes.
Yes.
So today women feel like if I let a man help me, if I let a man pay, I'm weak. Who wants to be weak? But what we need to do is reintroduce a different model of strength in women that allows her this capacity to receive from a man, that allows her to honor men. And I think we are finally ready for that conversation. It's brutal what's happening to men.
Yeah, I certainly hope we're ready for that conversation because it needs to be had. Get your pen, folks, because a lot of people that listen to us, they are into psychology, brain functionality, things like that. You teach mind management and emotional command.
Yeah.
I am very interested to see, where does that come from and tell us more about it.
Yes. So I think the greatest poverty in our culture today is our mind. What happened with technology, it's shaped our conversation, it shaped our relationship, it shaped the way we thought about things. Everything is flashing through our mind. So if you think about your average men or women today, if they lack this skill, when I say skill, it's something you learn to think about what they're thinking, pivot what they're thinking, replace what they're thinking, then what happens is that they become a victim to all the distractions all day long. So mind management is a pivotal skill for 5-year-olds, for 6-year-olds, for 20-year-olds, for 30-year-olds. And my daughter, I have 8 children, 4 girls, 4 boys. I have to be able to look at my 5-year-old and say, I need you to manage your emotion right now by replacing your thought pattern. And this needs to happen at a very young age continually, because when we are constantly bombarded by information and we don't have the capacity to manage our thoughts impact our emotion impacts our physiology impacts our spirituality. So we now have data that says so much of the disease is really actually rooted in our thought process. In negative thought pattern causes inflammation. And this is what we are seeing. You can go organic all day long, but if you're not thinking well, you're going to see inflammation all over your body. Now, our emotions are regulated by our thought process. So a woman or a man's capacity being like, what am I thinking? I need to fix how I am thinking so I don't have to feel this way. We live in a victim world. We are a victim of our emotion to a point where we change laws based on feelings. Can you imagine the need for emotional command as a skill set? Here's my question. How do we go through 2 decades of education without mind management skills or emotional command?
Right.
The average person makes 25,000 decisions a day. The ability to manage your mind is survival. How
Mm-hmm.
do we come? It's a massive oversight in society. And it's a skill training because we have a lot of psychologists and therapists that use our training. And it says they just need to know how,
Right.
And so if you have a follow-up question to that.
Well, I do have a little follow up because, we agree 100%. So a lot of times parents teach their kids, use your words, which does help when they're throwing a fit.
Mhm.
But I hadn't heard, I do a lot of mindfulness training, but not in young children. So that sparked my interest. Can you give an example when you said you tell your 5-year-old, I need you to change your thought pattern. Could you show us what that looks like?
Yes. So for example, that's so annoying. First of all, language shapes our perception. Okay? So
Mm-hmm.
if I say you're so annoying, or they're like, that is so hard, they're basically creating an image in their mind. So how do we change our, emotion? We change our perception. How do we change perception? We change language. So how do I say to my child, I said, well, how could I do this a different way? So there's like in my house, it's illegal words. Let me just give you even what this looks like on an 8-year-old. So my 8-year-old, I was right before school. We do scripting in the women's school. We have thousands of scripts because like I can
Cool.
tell you to be kind, but what does kindness actually sound like in a script, right? So I was going through my 8-year-old and I said, okay, right before school, we have to manage other people's opinion. That's an important skill. People are defined by other people's opinion. So, they have a script, and my kitchen, I have a script book, like literally a script book. They wrote hundreds of script. And so one of the scripts we had was, if somebody makes fun of you, what do you say? And we wrote, your opinion of me is not my opinion of me. So anyway, that was it. 2 months later, my daughter comes over to me. She's 8. And she's like, Mom, this boy was making fun of me. I was like, so how do you feel? I was like, it didn't really bother me, Mom. I was like, what did you say to him? I was like, well, I just told him, Mom, that his opinion of me was not my opinion of me. And she moved on. I was like, I
Oh,
teach
wow.
Love it.
thousands of women in their 40s and 50s to manage other people's opinion. All she needed was a script and how to talk to herself. Can you imagine the thousands of scripts we need as a language to shape our response to our thoughts and our emotion?
It's incredible. It really is.
Yeah.
Wow, that's some powerful stuff. I'm like, all the light bulbs are going off for me right now, because it's like, I have 2 young kids also, and it's important. And I try to raise them like, because I personally don't really care what people think about me. Like, it's different from presenting well. Like, when I go in public, I make sure that I am ready, ready for public consumption, is what I always tell my family. Are you dressed for public consumption, right? Like, or are you rolling out in sweatpants? I'm like, don't make us look like the typical homeschool family who just has dirt under the fingernails and like doesn't have ironed clothing. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. So that's big. So that's not where I'm coming from, but it's like, yeah, that whole, are you concerned if you are doing what's right, what you feel is right? Do we really need to be concerned with what someone's opinion of you is? And I think that's huge. So I love that you have the script and those, I think, Ron, you probably think about this in the business world. We always had we're trying to foresee conversations we would have with leaders or employees or whoever. And I would always have something ready to go, even though you don't know exactly how it's going to come up. But I think that's wonderful that you are prepping your children like that. That's huge.
Yeah, that's great. And I always tell people, you're creating a story, and your story is your image, your self-image. January, we talked about, you mentioned women and scripting. I'm not active, but Kristen knows this. Unfortunately, I did divorce, and I've been out there a few times, and the anger has the origin of hurt. Like, I've seen females, they're making all these demands or how strong I am, and they're posting selfies and all the stuff, but underneath it all is hurt. Do you find that that's an origin of a lot of I guess issues that you deal with women?
Yes. And boils down to skills. And I just say this, Ron, like I gave you one skill, which is how to manage other people's opinion. There's hundreds of them. So what am I saying to you? Women today, if they don't know how to hold themselves accountable, like literally a script, if they don't know how to process a pain. Like that's a skill. This hurts. Why does this hurt? What's the root cause? How can I deal with it? Like these are just like skills that are non-negotiable. If a woman doesn't know how to hold a man accountable, if a woman doesn't know her values unconditional and based on what people think of them, I'm going somewhere. So imagine hundreds of skills that women need to manage the pain to be able to show up to a man. You as a, somebody, you're divorced, you're looking for another woman. If these women don't have any skills, then they're repeating the same patterns of what probably brought them to that same situation. But and it's the same thing, by the way, with leadership. The hardest part of leadership is because they have no foundational skill. It's like trying to win Olympics without basic foundational like routine, saying no to myself. So the work is harder in marriages. The work is harder in leadership because we don't have some of the most essential skills. And here's what I always tell men and women. If you were married and you had no training on how to find the right guy or be the right guy, that's a really, we're off to a bad start. And I said, communication is a massive issue in marriage. I ask couples, because we train thousands of couples, if you don't understand that the basis of communication is 7% words, 38% tonality, and 55% body language, you're at a deficit in your marriage. So now we're trying to solve marriages, solve the divorce crisis. We could just train them. We could just say, listen, how do you compliment a man? Like, seriously, like ask you because in our school, we go 0 to 10, how good are you at the skill level? I ask women all the time, 0 to 10, tell me your skill level on complimenting a man. And they're like, I never really thought about it, January. Why? Why don't we think about it? Because if you think about it, I'm like, hey, you look good. That's different than, honey, you look really good today. 7% words, 30% tonality, 55% body language, plus the script. I mean, what I'm basically trying to say is that your life is harder. Our lives are harder because we have robbed men and women of the foundation of the things that we need to build society.
Yeah. Hey, Kristen, let me jump in one more
second. Yeah, do it.
You covered my next question, but I love what you're saying. And in my masterclass on communication, we covered body language. You said tonality. We do voice inflection, tonality, not basically verbal, nonverbal. And then I tie it to a first date. I say there's never a time we're more alert or aware of ourselves and other people as a first date. Do you guys ever talk about that or process that with the women?
Absolutely. And here's the thing is that when you go on a first date, what's the goal? I tell women all the time. And in our training, I said, you have one goal, and that is to contribute value in your conversation. If your goal is there to figure out if it's the right one, if you figure out that's the wrong goal. A woman needs to be trained how to walk in every single room with learning how to contribute good in the world. But how does she do that, Ron? Like, what are the 5 skills that a woman needs to contribute value in that conversation? She needs to know how to compliment a man. She needs to ask the right meaningful questions. She needs to not be judgmental. She needs to seek the good in that conversation. She also needs to hold a man accountable. She also needs to learn how to not overtalk. I mean, can you imagine the training on that first date that is necessary to have a fruitful date? Regardless if that date is, go somewhere, we should have this idea that in that moment, I have given the best of who I was by contributing value to this man. And I hope that I've left him better than when we walked in the conversation. What if that was the mindset of women? And why don't they have that mindset?
They need training. Well, it's funny when you were talking about the complimenting, like, do you know how to compliment a man? And I think back to when I was a newer bank manager, and I had my boss was a lesbian in a relationship with another woman. They'd been married for a while, and I remember, I don't even know how this came up, but I was talking about how my husband was at home mowing the lawn, and she goes, I hope you compliment him and tell him that you're thankful. Wow. And I said, oh yeah, because I was still in like the corporate mindset, like that 50-50 mindset, right? Like I just didn't register to me as something that was at utmost importance. And she's like, Kristen, you need to make sure that you're always letting your man know that he's appreciated and valued. And I remember thinking like, wow, it was profound, especially coming from someone who I didn't really think would understand maybe where a man's
Yes. Oh,
mindset is, right? So, and that really stuck with me. And so I've always made sure to, like when he does do, because that's his like tasks. What is it? Acts of service. That's his
yeah.
love language. And now I'm like, wow, like and that was like 15 years ago, but
It's a
I
great
remembered
advice.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, it's so simple, but so overlooked in so
Yes.
many marriages.
Well, women don't know how. That's what it really boils down to me. Like good men, good women, we were never trained. But if you think about how fast our world is growing, it's not like we're taught to like, let me just think about how I could make that conversation better. Let me think
Mhm.
about what could be a better way for me to show up. Let
Right.
me, like these are just trainings that are so essential. Like if you go on a first date and you don't know your resting face and what it communicates, you could want to go on
Yeah.
a date and that date is shut simply because you're unaware that your resting face isn't very kind. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
Like these are trainings. Nobody is born an Olympian. Mozart needed to be Mozart. And that's what I tell women. I said, the problem with our culture today is we're untrained. We go through decades of therapy, which by the way, I'm pro therapy, without skill training.
Yeah.
January, I love that. And we can gift all
I,
these chemicals. Chris and I talk a lot about dopamine and oxytocin and,
Yeah.
the chemicals in the brain that we can release in a conversation. And it's so important. I love what you're saying, but I think you're right. I think finally the pendulum swung so far that we
yeah.
lost our mind, but it is coming back. And I think it's the right time for these conversations. So
Yeah.
I hope people are listening intently. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Kristen.
Well, okay, so I want to pivot a little bit. You've worked with everyone from doctors to stay-at-home moms. What is the one struggle that almost every woman has in common?
Yeah. I think they're overwhelmed and they're overwhelmed because they're underskilled. That's
Mm,
a real struggle is that how do they manage everything? They want it all. And I'm going to be controversial and say, why shouldn't we want it all? And when I say all, peace, a beautiful marriage, a beautiful friendship, healthy.
mhm,
And so they are overwhelmed because they really don't know how to achieve it. So they
mm,
live their lives every single day like this is as good as it gets because they don't have the bridge to achieving it. So I think that's the main thing is they are overwhelmed, but there's no hope on how to achieve it. The second thing that I want to just sort of point out is also our self-worth is tied to what we can produce. So as women today, we call this in the women's school the poisonous P. Our metric has been based on external values. We have to put
mhm,
language to this thing. So if you think about what do we idolize, what's our model of women today, right? What do we revere? Power, possession, our perfect body, what we can
boss
feel.
babe.
Yep, correct, right? Like if
Yeah.
you can do an A, we have literally trained our young minds, our 4-year-old to say, you're better because you have an A. Like
Mm,
it's so conditional. We have defined it in our DNA. It's become part of us. And so women feel like their kitchen's dirty. They don't know how to clean a kitchen. They're not good enough. They're not making enough money. They're not good enough. And what happens is that everything has a metric in their mind. So they're just living as though they're not good enough and compound that with being overwhelmed, compound that without any skill training, it becomes like a life of hopelessness.
mm,
And then
yeah.
motherhood is a place where dreams die. And guess what? You have to show up for that spouse, your spouse with that level of like internal doubt. I mean, it's not, it's an injustice to women.
Right.
It
Right.
really is. And to men, by the way, because it's not like we're just one impacted. I'm not impacted without men being impacted. It's really, we
Right.
are in this together.
Yeah,
Right.
no, that's great. So January, we're everyone, like I've been on a lot of podcasts and they ask for one word, like the most important word in leadership. I'm not going to do that to you because that's really difficult. But you've
I
got
have a
eight.
word actually with that
Oh, you
question.
do? Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
do. Uh-huh.
Give it to us.
I think training.
I do.
Training.
I absolutely love that. I do. And you're exactly right. Even in basic communication, we're
Mhm.
not taught.
Training. Yeah.
But let me jump into this. Eight
Mhm.
kids, global business, thriving marriage, I hope.
Yes.
Um,
Really thriving marriage.
I do a lot of executive coaching, and a lot of times we have to start with consistency and routine.
Mhm.
What does a day look like for you?
A great question. I'm up early in the morning. Uh, my typical day starts at 4:30 or 5. I study in the morning. I have 8 children. My youngest is 4, my oldest is 17. I still study an hour every day to train myself with my own skills that I need at a
Mm.
personal level. It's non-negotiable. Prayer is a big part of my life. Eating healthy is a big part of my life. So I just I get up and then I study and I pray and then I plan. And then I've got littles. So I still have, I'll say for those, women who feel like, they should do everything to themselves. I don't believe in it. I think it's the biggest cause of postpartum depression or depression. In other countries, you get help. Right now,
Mm.
I don't have help, but in the different seasons of my life, we should get help. So why am I saying this to you? So a typical day for me is that I prep in the morning, but then I've got somebody helping me in the morning to just get started. And then I'm with my children. And then I start again at 9 o'clock. And then my day looks a lot like planning, meeting with people, podcast. Um, and then at the end of the day, I cook. Like, to me, cooking is a big part of nurturing my family. It's just an important part of me, just because I
Absolutely.
think our health crisis is massive. So that's what my typical day looks like. My children hold the fort down for me. What I mean by that, if I've got long days, they'll say, Mom, I've got this. We'll watch
Mm.
the littles, we'll make dinner. So that's kind of what my day looks like. But as an entrepreneur, I can make my own schedule, but it's not without training. And that's what I always just tell women. I said, if you want to climb Mount Everest, you need training. If you want to be a great woman, you need training. If you want a great wife, you need training.
I think that's great. When you and I spoke the other day, you talked about how so many women don't even know how to keep a schedule,
No.
right? And I know from someone who was in corporate for so long, and then I am working on my own, homeschooling. That was an eye opener, and I realized, oh wow, I might not know how to keep a schedule either. I'm still adjusting to where it's like you don't have to get up and be somewhere at 7 a.m.
Mhm.
right? Like it's different, but you still have to be productive. It just looks different. So you're seeing that pretty commonly, right? Where
Yeah, I think
okay.
it boils down to women don't know how to design a life, a beautiful life. They just
Mm,
think this is it. Let me give you an example. Like, I've got, you think having a children, that means you abandon your routine. I said, no, it means you double down on your routine. Children thrive on routines.
mm-hmm,
And if you don't have a routine, which is so basic, how can you make time for your man? Right.
right.
This is like, so these are just like, I think, training. But one thing I see too, is that our trainings today does not integrate the whole person. So if you think about it like leadership, right? You'll talk about sort of life skills and communication skills, but we don't talk about complimenting your spouse as though that's not important when you show up
Mm-hmm,
at work. If you're not successful at home, it's going to impact your capacity to perform at work. But we've lived such this disintegrated sort of ideology that's like, that's your work life, this is your home life, that's your friendship, and it's a fruit of individualism, but it
right,
doesn't work. And you know that
right,
because we've got this burnt out, but it's really burnt out because they're burnt out at home, right?
right.
And so we have to start looking at the integrated version of the whole person. So we have to integrate the whole woman when we do these, trainings. But also, I just want to kind of put this in here on because Kristen, because I feel like our training is also have been void of our sexuality.
Mm,
This is a big thing that we are seeing right now, date out with, you know, girls with the school system. Our education system has become so feminized
right.
that boys are not thriving, and they're
Yeah.
labeled ADHD, and that carries on.
I
So
think that's huge. So that actually was my next question because you and I briefly spoke about this the other day, but I want to talk about school. So how has feminism shaped our public education system? And are we raising beta males as a result?
yes, well, 10,000 foot overview, male brains are different than female brains. And we just have to acknowledge that distinction. And so what happened is that we've diluted, any kind of gender for the sake of equality. And so what happened is that then infiltrated our school system. So now you've got a lot of women that are making decisions in the education system. And so this is sort of what this looks like is that, we girls and boys are just different, right? They're not
Mm-hmm.
the same. Their brains are different. And so if you have a mother who doesn't know how to train, a boy or doesn't understand the distinction between boys and girls because she too has been conditioned that, hey, listen, equality means you can do whatever a man does, whatever a girl does, right?
Mm,
And so now the boy goes to school. Boys are not made for circle time. They learn through movement.
Mm.
Girls can sit there. So our education system is really better suited for girls, which is why more women are graduating today. So now they go to the school system and then they're labeled bad because they're bouncing off the wall, right? Compounding
Right.
the fact that we have a health industry that pumps a lot of sugar with boys that are not designed to sit down, and then they're sent to their therapist. And we now have data that our even our psychological institute have also been infiltrated by this toxic masculinity. Sure, they're out there, but that's not the majority of men. And so now this boy who doesn't get training or validated that she's a boy or male in their home goes to school, devalued, and then goes to therapy. And now he's in a deficit by just starting to school. So
Mm.
now you've got these boys who are afraid to be men. And then he's surrounded with these girls who are like, boss baby. He just feels inadequate all day long. I
Wow.
mean, it it's really we are seeing right now a society that is kind of this has been happening the last 50 years, but it's not a sustainable model when you can't have men be men.
Right.
That's why we need to reintroduce a conversation of we have to be able to teach men and talk to men like men. We have to be teach women like women, and this genderless sort of idea. And it's happening in corporate, like, oh, God forbid, I'll talk about, male and female. And I know that because we're trying to get into corporate and say, listen, we want to teach women because women have different issues than men. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, we've got to make sure that it's all. And I'm like, this idea of a genderless society is not healthy.
Yeah, not sustainable either.
No.
Ron,
You
I
know,
know with your grandson,
yeah.
he's been making sure he gets
Well,
he's
we know
manning
that
him up.
little boys start getting testosterone. And I remember, this is so interesting, January. I don't remember a lot about my early childhood. I remember being in kindergarten, we called Head Start. And I remember this feeling I would get when you had to bring your own little mat and we had nap time. It was like, I
Mhm.
think 30 minutes. To this day, I can remember dreading that. And I still
Mhm.
remember me squirming, and this little kid beside of me would fall asleep as soon as his head hit the mat. And I couldn't understand that. But I would be rolling around. I'd want to mess with other people, and the teacher staring at me. And it's so weird to me that I faced a lot of trauma, but I considered that traumatizing. I would dread it
Mhm.
every single day that I'm going to have to lay for 30 minutes
Mm.
because for some odd reason I'm supposed to lay here and nap. And I get it if they didn't have parents and they never went to bed. But isn't that crazy that I remember that
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
little bit of trauma in my
It
life?
is. It's a small t trauma because that compounds over time. But if you think about it, we dilute males' testosterone by
Yes, we
Mhm.
do.
emasculating them by so imagine every day and then you just surging. Why men are supposed to be protectors and aggressors? Like there's a goodness about that. It needs to
Mhm.
be obviously harnessed. Just like women are emotional, like their brain actually has greater capacity to endure emotion. But we could say, well, everything is emotion. Like then we become crippled. It's that time of the month. Then we change laws based on gender. I'm like, that too needs training. So what am I
Right.
saying to you? It's then we're emasculating men and then we're suffocating, sort of this idea of the complementarity of both male and female. And like your grandson right now needs 4 recess. Like
That's right.
but women don't need the 4 recess. They need more conversation. So I
Right.
think it's something that I think we're going to be seeing as data is coming out, but we need boots on the ground and grassroots movement to say, what do we do? What's the solution? Because it doesn't, like I think the solution is not like we're going to separate it, but I do think that we need to start looking at our society as how do we teach women that's different than men? And how do we
Mhm.
teach men that honors women? And I think that's how we create a sustainable society is that there is actually the complementarity of their nature, and I think that we don't have a choice to have that. If we don't have this conversation, that's how we got here in this sort of transgender movement to one of mutilation. We've become,
Mm.
we've become so dehumanized because we lack some of those foundation human skills, such as communication. Think about this. Loneliness is an international epidemic. How
Mm.
is that possible in a social media driven world? And I tell, in our community, in the women's school, loneliness is a communication issue. It's a depth issue. We could hang out at the bar for 6 hours and never go deep and go home feeling empty. Or you could be in a
Mhm.
10-minute conversation and being like, tell me what are your dreams? What
Mm.
do you love? What's hard right now? They just need to know how to have deep, meaningful conversation in a brief amount of time that actually nourishes every part of their being so that they don't waste time in this frivolous, mindless things that leave them empty. Midlife crisis, new phenomenon. Why? It's an unprocessed life.
Mm.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible.
Go ahead, Kristen.
I was going to, it was funny. I was going to say, I have the nap time. I have a little trauma from a nap time too. And it was in kindergarten, and literally this girl, and it's so funny how I remember, and I had this opinion about this girl all the way through high school because of what she did. But I was one of those ones, Ron, I was able to fall asleep on the mat. But I remember waking up and this girl was standing over me, and she had a dress on. And I remember, so I woke up and I was like, what the, and so it was really odd. And her name was Erin. So I still remember all through elementary, middle, we went to school through senior year together. There was something that clicked with me that was weird and not appropriate. And I was not friends with her the entire, 12, 13 years. So I kind of brought that up slightly as a joke, Ron, because there's my little trauma, a little different. But still, I got the ick, I was like, ooh, that was weird.
So January, you touched on something I think is so important. You mentioned again, we called it recess, and there is no clearer picture of gender roles than if you do children's recess. I so remember the kids are on the monkey bars, the slides. We're getting like we're over there seeing the teacher because we got scrapes and all this, and the girls are over there. Now they would jump rope some, but they would huddle up, talk, and just wouldn't be nearly as, I guess you would say, dynamic as the boys. Is that kind of what you were implying?
Yes. Well, so essentially that is a great visual of just how different male and female is. And we need to start having that conversation. Here's an important factor. In our brain, we have a reticular activating system, our RAS. What we focus on expands, right? So if I'm going to focus on how male and female are the same, I'm going to get more evidence of it. Like, for example, if you're pregnant, all of a sudden you start to see all the pregnant women that you never saw before, right? Yep. Because your brain, God designed our brain to actually filter, because otherwise we'd go nuts. We'd see everything. You start looking for a car, you start seeing all the Honda. So if we come into our education system and our filter system is everybody's genderless, everyone's equal, without the lens of male or different, male and female, guess what? That's exactly what we're going to find. And then we're going to create solution that's going to make them genderless. So the reticular activating system is such an important awareness and training. This is what, by the way, what's happening in DAI. In my opinion, what we focus on expands, right? Reticular activating system, all we see is everything's racist. I'm like, well, because that's what you're telling your brain. That's what essentially you are commanding your brain. So now everything is racist. I'm like, well, why don't we train men and women to actually understand how to shape their perception so they don't see, they don't have more things or what they don't want. Like in therapy, when you're just talking about all the past, I'm like, okay, that's great. You need to have a good therapist to make sure you're actually casting a vision of future skill training, because you're going to see more of it. What am I saying to you? It's a sad thing when the educators are undertrained and they have no capacity to actually see the needs of the children. It's a tragedy.
And on the everything's racist thing, I had bought my friend a mug, and it was in 2020 where you can personalize. There can be like little images. So it was like me and my two friends on the mug. And one of them is Vietnamese. And so, and the mug options for personalization, they give you like 1,000 skin tones to choose from. I think it would be offensive if I made her look just like me, quite frankly. And so I, gave her her skin tone and her dark hair, right? So anyhow, she gets the mug, she's laughing, and she says, oh, my son told me she's racist, Mom, for making her actually look the way she actually looks in real life in this depiction of her on the mug. And she thought it was funny, but for me, I'm like, it bothered me a little bit, because that couldn't be further from the truth.
You were honoring her, but I mean, that's literally what's happening. I remember I came here from the Philippines. I was 11 years old. I'm an immigrant. I didn't see my parents for 5 years straight, so I get a legal visa. Wow. So when I came here, I was very grateful to be American, but I remember I was trying to assimilate to the culture, and I had a friend who was Filipino, was born here. And I remember this very clearly. Like, you remember the nap. I walk in the room. He's like, January, see, I'm the only Filipino. And I remember thinking, this was probably like 5 years to America. And I was like, I don't even see anyone who's Filipino or American or white. I'm like, I just come in as January. And in that moment, I thought, he's perception is that he's the only Filipino and he's seeing everything that he's different, as opposed to
Mm,
like, that's amazing, it's different, but I don't have to like zero in on the fact of my race. But
right.
that is literally the message we are giving. Like all this DEI stuff, I'm like, why don't you just do a reticular activating training? Like, why don't we just do that? Like
Yeah.
that one training alone could make us all not racist. I'm like, I'm like, oh, it's so simple. And maybe it's a lot more complicated, but in my
You know,
mind, it's simple.
January, in the corporate world, I do a lot of coaching, and we call it, it's confirmation bias. That's a psychological term. If you are going to look for things that confirm
Yeah,
your own
right.
bias or your own belief system, and we see
Mhm.
that all the time. And
Mhm.
I've kind of broke that down for people, and they're like, "Oh, I get it," because we have our own perception and we don't look at enough perspectives. But anyway, um, this is what I would love to have, and I'm sure Kristen would too. Could you give us a story, just a brief story of someone who maybe had a low self-esteem, and in
Mhm.
what your training did, and maybe what that looked like on the other end?
Great. Yeah. So, based on that confirmation bias, so if you've been told, right, that what makes you valuable as a woman or as a man is you make millions of dollars a year. Like you saw that growing up, 10 years old, 11 years old, you saw your dad, and then that's what you saw all over, right? So in your mind, you think your value is $1 million, perfect body, right? So you now have this goal that every human being desires to be valuable. So you're chasing after that. So how do we fix it through training? Neurologically, we have billions of neurons in our brain. So we have to reset our belief system. Just because we believe it doesn't mean it's accurate, right?
Right.
So in our training, we go back to, so what is your metric of your value as your belief system? And let's go back and rewire it. So we then teach them, my value is unconditional. It is not based on what I can produce, my perfection. And you say that for 15 days, 30 days to literally rewire like a new language. So it's a rewiring of your belief system that has become the metric of your decision making and your value. But that's only one part, Ron. So you rewire like you learn French, you're learning a language, you're
Mm,
saying it over and over again. You're literally creating a new neurological rewiring. But I could say that all day long and not learn the skill of honoring my
Right.
value. It won't
Right.
matter. So now we teach them to rewire their self-worth is unconditional. But then we say, what are the skills that you need? Well, you need mind management. You need you need to know how to talk to yourself when you start to doubt yourself. You need to know how to get up when you fail. What are the 5 steps after failure? So it has to be a mindset and skill set. So that's how we train them neurologically, wire your brain, develop the hundreds of skills. I mean, you start with 1 or 2 so that what you are is you become competent, that you are uniquely created, irreplaceable, and unrepeatable, and we offer this world no other person can from a very neurological and psychological level.
that's
Yeah. I
incredible.
love that. Go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah. What would you say to the women listening right now who feel, yeah, either, one or a multiple, they probably all do, feel totally depleted and lost? Where do they start?
There's hope. Like if I can think about, you think you can learn French? So listening to here, I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll be challenged, but I can learn French. All you need is training to learn French. All you need is training to learn skill after skill to design the beautiful life that you've always wanted, but you didn't think you deserve or didn't know how to achieve. So if you're listening to me, have hope, but be open to training. Because that's what I think
Mm,
the world is in need right now, is that we can't solve the political crisis. We're not going to solve it, by changing policy. We have to solve it individually through training. And so if
yeah.
you're listening right now, raise your hand and say, I need training. I want to know how. And that's what we offer in the Women's School is we just want to show you how.
I think it's incredible. Ron, I don't know, you're in a totally different area. I know both of you are in the South, I would say, right? So Florida, South
Mhm.
Carolina. And for me, it's really interesting because being here right outside of Portland, and my husband's a Portland police officer, he tells me that when he sees a woman dressed feminine
Mhm.
walking on the streets of Portland, usually like it's in the business area, but it really is, he's taken aback because he's like, oh, okay. Because that is how Here, and I don't know if it's just, Oregon, Washington, but we don't see like there's that gender fluidity,
Yeah.
and that's how women present here a lot, is where the hair is cut short like a man, and the clothing is
Mhm.
pretty much men's clothing, right? Like, so it's just really interesting. And what would you say? Of course it's different. I was just in Charleston visiting Ron, and it's like everyone is so feminine. It was so vastly different. Nashville, very feminine, right? But very different here. So what would you say, what's the psychology behind why we see that here in Portland or in Seattle?
Oh, it's easy, but I'm trying to be careful.
I know, right?
Well, I'd say move. No, there's a psychology. I would just say it's a byproduct of an ideology that women and men are the same and there's nothing different. Whatever men can do, I can do. And so,
Mhm.
in honest, here's my opinion, that I think the whole transgender movement, or the devaluing of male and female, we have to get political, is because we just don't know our value. We don't know that we don't have to change anything. We are valuable as we are.
Mhm.
Right. So that's sort of the philosophy. So when it comes to ideology, it's like we've worked so hard for equality to a point of diluting what makes us uniquely male and female. That's
Right,
the
right.
ideology that the feminist movement was like, equality, equality. Although, by the way, there's a lot of fractures in there, so it's
Mhm.
not just sort of this one big, huge feminist movement. So, and by the way, I celebrate the fact that I'm here because of the feminist movement. I just think that, like most things,
Right.
it needs correction. So that really comes from the ideologies that we are just sort of genderless. And I think
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think that you could ever be happy apart from the way God created you, which is your unique, irreplaceable gender. So I think that if we need to give women a model of a woman that's strong, but also understands how to care herself, understands what it means to embody being a woman, what that looks like. Because sometimes it's like the only way for me to be strong and to have equality is that I've got to be dressed like men. I've got,
Mhm.
So I think that ideology goes back to, again, they don't know how
Right.
to be strong, and the only way they think to be strong is to be like men. And
Mhm.
women are strong in a different way than men are strong. And I
Right.
don't want to be strong like
Absolutely.
men, like, and so we just need to basically go back to some of the foundational standards. Like, we need to teach women on college campuses how to respond when a man opens the door for you, how to
Mm.
smile, how to dress up, not in your PJs all day long,
Oh,
how to
yes.
build a routine,
Gosh.
how to,
Yes.
I mean, it just sounds so simple, Kristen, if you think about it, but go to our college campus, nobody's making their bed.
Oh, wow.
Think about the
Yeah.
language that everyone's using. Everyone's stressed, upset, anxious. I
Mhm.
mean, how do you change culture? You change language.
Right, right.
So
That's
we need to give
incredible.
them language on how to see themselves so that shape their perception.
That's so true. I do a lot of teaching on body language, the four gazes, like power gaze and things. Do you kind of start with eye contact? Where does that come into play in body language, like
It's a,
distance
yeah.
between the earlobe and shoulder and all those things?
Yes, I don't, and here's why. We could be
Okay.
masterful like that with the wrong heart. We have a lot of people who use that. I think it's an important training, but you want to train women with a genuine heart, because then they could manipulate that gaze, that look, to then get something to honor them and not really bring
Mm.
value. It is dangerous.
Hmm.
So we have to start with the interior woman. We have to say, okay, why is it important to present your highest and best self? What is the purpose to go on a date? How do I walk in the boardroom? What's my goal in that corporate environment? How can I bring value to every conversation? And when we equip them with the depth, it's easy to train the look, the smile, like, I think that without genuineness doesn't really come off well. Genuine person, awkward external, we can fix that. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Mm.
So we
Oh,
want
yeah.
to we
Yeah.
want to train it from the inside out. I don't want to train people on how to go on a date and how to have a conversation without having the genuine, sincere desire of what I should, what my motive should be in that,
Yeah.
in that conversation. Same thing with making money. Like, we should have money because we need money to be able to further good causes. But if my money is to fuel my narcissistic, you know, it's not going to make you happy or anyone happy. So what we
Mhm.
want is to train women to say, what's the purpose of money? These are the ways these are hundreds of skills you need to make money. How should we use our money? It's the same concept, is that we need character formation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So act as if could actually be a toxic,
Act as if without the
toxic
right
way.
heart, but if you have the right
Yeah.
heart, you can act as if.
Right,
And
right. I like that. That's a good eye opener for me. I like
I
it.
mean, you can fail, like, oh my gosh, I totally messed up, but you're like, but my value doesn't change. I messed up, so I'll try again. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
right.
you can't fake, like, this idea of being genuine is like almost foreign. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I really was, I'm like, Kristen, I like that you're just a straight shooter. Like, what you see is what you get. Like, we need to
Yeah.
train people to be sincere. But the
Yeah.
problem is that we are so stressed and hijacked that we have no capacity to think of the other. Like, we always say in
Right.
our school, stress makes you selfish, whether you like it or not, because in your brain, it feels like you're being chased by a lion.
Right, right.
Stress
You
in
know, it's
marriage, stress in money. Yeah.
it's interesting because my personality being a straight shooter, and I think it's more accepted from men than it is from women,
Mhm.
because I've turned people off before. Like, even I was meeting because my husband's a New Yorker, and so we were doing this. I was like the freak from the West Coast, right? Like, everyone was meeting me, and this is going back 20 years, but I got feedback that they're like, oh wow, you just really tell it as it is, and they're not used to that, and that could be off-putting sometimes. And I think, I thought to myself, like, I would rather just be genuine and honest, and I think that if I was a man, that would have been totally acceptable. So it's really interesting because I just don't have time for surface
Yeah.
relationships. It exhausts me, but I don't think the world is used to a woman that speaks her mind.
Well, the world is also not trained to have genuine, sincere conversations, Kristen. Like,
Right.
you and I went deep in like a matter of like 10, 15 minutes. But that's a
True.
training. You know what I mean? Like, they're trained to have fluff, TikTok conversation, both male and female, by the way. And so when you have this sort of deep conversation, it's almost like they don't know what to do with it. And
Right.
think about the comparison and competition that's happening in friendship, right? So you're having a conversation, in my mind, like we train women, you get rid of comparison and competition completely. You eradicate it, just like you, you put something in atrophy. But right now, comparison and competition they think it's a norm. It's like, no, it's not a norm,
Right, right.
No.
And how could that be a norm? There's a healthy competition. It's like you want to obviously, work, but when it becomes sort of this, you're better than me, I'm better than me, I'm like, no, show up better as you are. Compliment the other person, then you don't have this insincere dialogue that's like, oh, I wonder what they're saying. I mean,
Right.
talk about exhausting.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that in marriage, which is, by the way, happening all the time?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I know we're coming to a close here, but I've talked about how before 2020, when I started working from home, that our marriage was like a pissing contest, right? And so it was always who's slept the least, and who's done the most, and because we were both working 40 plus hours a week, and so that is exhausting and it's toxic, and it's amazing how great our marriage has become by getting on the same page and stopping that trajectory.
Hey, January, I have a unique question. You know, let's say if I compliment a woman and they say, "Oh, this is just something I threw on," or they can't look me in the eye. There's all of these things that I'm sure you pick up on. When you are first speaking, let's say with a woman, what are some characteristics that you see, or language, eye contact, whatever it is? How long does it take you to start spotting insecurities or lack of training, as you've said?
Well, I've been doing this 25 years, so really fast. I mean, is your question maybe like, what can you spot?
Yeah. What do you see? And then, like, if someone's listening, I know we've covered a lot of
Yeah,
things, but
sure,
they may not even be aware of that. And of course, I want to direct them your way. They
sure.
need this training. So, what's some things you look for initially?
Language. You can sell the language that we use shapes our perception. Your perception shapes the way you make decisions. So if you're coming to a woman, and they're like, well, I don't know, I can already tell by her language is doubt. Do you see what I mean? So
Mhm.
you come in, there's a difference. So Ron, you're like, oh, January, that's you see a girl, that's a really nice dress. A woman could either be like, oh, it was $2, or I just threw this on, or she says, thank you, I sincerely appreciate that. Thank you. Pause.
Exactly.
Look, but women don't know how to do that. So she's underskilled, but she's underskilled because she has no language for it. So it doesn't mean she's a bad person, or it just means, like most of us, she was simply undertrained. But there's collateral damage for an untrained woman, is my point. And you see that through the language that she uses really right away. Language is a huge indicator.
Yeah, I love that.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very, very true. And Kristen, I don't mean to dictate, but we have to jump in before we get off here. What role has social media played? I know there's OnlyFans, and I told Kristen I was going to do the Only Feet, but
oh my God!
I don't know if Kristen warned you, but we usually have a lot of fun on this podcast. What role has social media played over the past 10 years with women, their self-perception, self-esteem, all these things that we've talked about?
Was that for Kristen or for me?
That's for you.
Oh, well, massive. And here's technology in general has literally changed just how women deal. And here's why. Women are relational. That's why we have a bigger part of our brain communication, but social media has thwarted our capacity for depth of communication. It has distracted our day-to-day focus. Women don't know how to be present in conversation long enough to go deep. Women don't have skills to actually have basic communication skills. Go to a middle school. Nobody's having eye contact. Nobody, ask a college woman, do you know how to study yourself? She doesn't. So social media has made a quick fix on the dopamine without depth. So what essentially we're creating sort of these robotic women who are unfulfilled, who, by the way, are taught, hey, go for it. Be like a man. So now they're driving. So social media has exacerbated the problem of, I would say, a lack of understanding of the gift of being a woman that has really, I think, bled into family life. The hope I have, I think there's men out there that are saying, I don't want this concept of I am woman, hear me roar. I think that's why we're seeing a lot of conservative kind of and it's not even conservative, the way we think about it. It's just moral values, I want honesty. Right. Honesty is the basis of conversation. So we're seeing sort of really a rise in men kind of I don't want that. So I do think that there's a good thing that's happening in social media because they're seeing how bad it is, and men are rising. So we're seeing the problem exacerbated, but also I think the problem with evil is that good people are saying we got to do something about it. So I think that we can also use social media for the good.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's such a great way. I'm seeing so much messaging coming out, and it's very refreshing. In the Instagram reels, a lot of people are doom scrolling. I generally am just on there to post and then ghost somewhat. But my husband will do some doom scrolling. But I have to say, he's got this algorithm where it's male empowerment, a lot of cool stuff, and he's really into working out. And he'll be like, I saw this workout. Now I'm doing the Stairmaster for an hour before I start my lifting. So there's some. To your point, there's some really positive things out there. So I'm starting to see a correction. There's market corrections. I'm starting to see a social correction here, which is great. Yes.
I think women need to be on board with it because I think we're a little slow, but I do think that I do think we are going to start to see this correction, but I do think it takes and every woman has to kind of own their call for training in order for we're really going to correct culture.
Right. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Hey, January, as we wind down, and this is a little off the script, what advice would you give maybe single men, 30s, 40s, whatever?
I saw you had a smirk on your face. It was this one's for me personally.
This is totally selfish. No, do you ever advise men? Do you ever, or I know it's the woman's school and I get it, that's your focus, but if you were advising men right now, because some men may have stuck with us for the podcast. So
I'd hope so.
Okay, so to be sincerely honest, I just have such high regard for men, and I get asked for men's advice because I do not only do have the blue book for women, but I also have the training for women. But I do feel inadequate because I'm not a man, and I just feel so my advice is coming from you learning about the woman's perspective. So what advice would I offer you, really design who Ron is for the kind of woman that you want. Like if there was no obstacle, Ron, how would you design this new chapter of who you are? And with that in mind, how do you design that kind of woman? And going back to the reticular activating that we talked about, you know, put that in your sort of in your, your psyche and find that woman. And that's what I would basically focus on and then develop the skill. That's because, for example, I want to be somebody who, a woman is inspired by. So you work backwards, your self-image. And then you say, what are the 5 skills that Ron needs to design and to become an inspiring man? So that essentially you're going to attract that kind of woman. In the meantime, I would say study women. Study women because that's how you know what you want and don't want. Like you should have a radar on like, I can tell that's not good. And it's not like you're judging. And I think that heart matters. It's that you want to make sure that in this next season of your life, you find a woman that values who you are.
Yeah.
And also you're capable of valuing who she is.
Yeah. I love that.
so-
Kristen made that about me. I was meeting men in general, but hey.
Well, I saw like
I'll
a
take
smirk
some-
on your face. I'm like, oh, Ron's got one.
Well, I was hoping a lot of men stayed with us, but I'm sure that applies across the board and not just
Yeah.
for me. But no, that was really good. Kristen?
You know what's funny is I'm looking at all these questions that I didn't get to. You have so much to offer. We need to have you back on because I mean, literally, I had like 20 more questions for you. We're obviously not going to do that. We would be here for 4 more hours. But you are incredible. And I actually personally want to take this training, even though, I feel like self-aware. I'm like, I feel like I'm pretty good, but we can always be better. And I think, Ron and I talk about just like a lifelong learner and how important that is. And there's always more out there and we can hone ourselves. The more you know, right? I don't know what that was a slogan from something in the 80s, but it's incredible what you're doing. And what's interesting
really
is I posted something the other day, and it was literally yesterday. I posted something, and it was, oh my gosh, so, a female acting ratchet, right? And so I had a male follower, and he messaged me, and he was like, "What happened to what was that? Did they do? It wasn't reform school? It was oh my gosh, back in the day,
finishing school.
Finishing school." He goes, "What happened to finishing school?"
Well,
and I'm like,
finishing school. Seriously.
yeah, I think it's great. And I actually told him, I said, interestingly enough, I just, started speaking with someone who's doing a women's school. And he was basically, I just gave him a little overhead. And he was like, that couldn't be more needed right now. So I think it's awesome. The timing is great. You've been doing this for 21 years, but now, like what's happening right now, I think we're at this point of, like we said, that pendulum has swung too far, and now it's correcting, and you're aligned.
January, we're going to do show notes, of course, but how can people reach you if women are interested in this? How do they reach you?
Yes, well, they can follow me on Instagram at January at the Women's School. But I just want to also share, the training that I talk about is called the New Woman Masterclass. And it's called the New Woman because I think I go back to 150 years ago, no freedom, to now unlimited freedom. I think there's a new woman emerging for such a time as this. And that's the comprehensive training that integrates the whole woman that's practical. So you can just go to the newwomanmasterclass.com and you'll really kind of just get a sliver of the training that we offer in our school.
Oh, I love that. This is so needed.
Oh, and I wanted to ask you, so my daughter is 14. What's the youngest that you would recommend starting?
Question.
Yes. It's a great question. So I actually have a 14-year-old. So there's such demand. So we have 13-year-old over to 80. We have thousands.
Oh, perfect.
But I'm going to say to you, I'm in Florida. Our training is approved. I think I might have told you that through the homeschool PPE. So we get reimbursed our masterclass. So I'm having a training for teens that are 13 to 17. And then we're actually going into college campuses now. We want to bring, because that's where movements are happening. So we want to bring into some of these basically training on new women into college campuses. So that's going to be finished in August. But the thing is that it's an accompaniment with a parent. That's the thing. It's like, if I'm going to teach your daughter how to manage her mind, I want to make sure that a mom knows how to enforce it.
Yeah.
But if you go
Absolutely.
to the training, that training your daughter will be free. It'll just come with it.
Okay, that's cool.
And yeah, so that's just because, they don't need quite a level of depth, but they need the training regardless.
Right, right. No, I think that's incredibly smart. And what you're doing, I know, because we talked a little bit about that the other day, and even like a Turning Point University, right? Like they have so much going on for that student age, but I don't know. I don't think they have something like what you're doing.
No,
so that
we're
would be
hoping
such a beautiful marriage.
Yeah, we're hoping to really. We're basically saying, listen, we've got the how-to. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've got the most integrated training, and so we're just starting that. I think sort of launching, and to be sincerely honest, because I had a baby. My youngest is 4. I wasn't willing to travel. I wasn't willing.
Yeah.
And so finally, we're ready to say, you know what? Finally, I think we are ready to share this to the world. Especially, I just spoke with the same stage with Matt Walsh, and basically saying,
Awesome.
Matt, you did, what is a woman? We're going to do how to be a woman.
That's a great marriage too.
True.
Wow. Yes. All right. This is exciting. I'm excited to, watch and see what you do, but I really believe in what you're about, and can't wait to personally take the training and then help inspire my daughter.
Thank you. Ladies, thank you for
letting it. Seriously.
I was going to say, ladies, thank you for letting me come on this ride. It's been really.
That's the quote of the day for me.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
All right. January, thank you so much. We love talking with you. Wow. This is just really good stuff. And the future's bright for sure. All right, everybody. Be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristen for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.